Hello YouTube, Mike Kohanam here. Today I'm going to talk about the deck that I used to get first place in the Duel Links Main Event this past weekend. This is a fairy deck that uses the agent monsters and the Tuning in the Sky skill, which is really strong right now in Duel Links. This video should be a guide to how the deck works, its strengths and weaknesses, some of the common plays that it makes, and what you can do when you're using this deck. I'll start with my deck list. This video is intended to be a guide to using the deck, so that if you're unfamiliar with Duel Links or the deck itself, you should be able to watch this video, understand the common plays that the deck makes, and take the deck pretty far in PvP dueling. I did play over 100 duels with this deck. I did use it in the WCS Speed Duel qualifiers as well, so I am familiar with a lot of the different moves that come up. At the heart of the deck is the Tuning in the Sky Archive skill. Because it's an archive skill, you can use it with any character you want. It really doesn't matter which. I know some players are using it with more popular characters that have specialized skills, including Varus with his Borreload skill, to try to throw opponents off. But that doesn't really work anymore, because at the start of the duel, it will show your opponent whether you're using an archive skill or not. So it really is only a tactical advantage if your opponent's not paying attention. But do as you will. If you want to use Varus, you can use Varus. Otherwise, choose your favorite character. I'm using Pegasus here. The Tuning in the Sky skill does a bunch of stuff, like many of the good skills in Duel Links. The drawback of the skill is that you're unable to special summon monsters other than the Agent monsters, Hyperion cards, Synchro monsters, and normal monsters. The skill itself can be used, has two different effects. The first effect will dump 2 Agent monsters from your deck to your graveyard, and then if you have a Hyperion or a Mystical Shine Bowl in your hand, you get to send one of them back to the deck to search for a different Hyperion or Agent monster and add that to your hand. In addition to this, it does add a copy of the Sanctuary in the Sky to your deck. That comes in handy because Neptune, who's one of the agent monsters, has an effect that searches for the Sanctuary in the Sky, and then a bunch of other cards have effects that take advantage of the Sanctuary in the Sky being on the field. But we'll talk about that later. The second part of the skill lets you shuffle a monster, any monster, from your graveyard into the deck to turn up to 2 of your monsters on the field into tuners. This lets you synchro summon some of your more powerful monsters without actually having a natural tuner on the field, for example, Earth. Crazy thing to note, and something I didn't even realize until I started using the deck, is that this is not a once per duel skill. Even though you might think you only need it once per duel, you can actually use it every turn. So you can keep dumping stuff into the graveyard from your deck, and keep adding more copies of Sanctuary in the Sky from outside the duel to your deck. Plus, you can keep returning monsters from your graveyard to your deck and be able to continuously make tuner monsters for you to use in synchro summons. The very basic strategy behind the deck is that you want to use the skill to dump monsters into the grave that you can benefit from having there. Master Hyperion is one of those monsters on the top of the list because you can special summon him simply by banishing an agent monster from your hand field or graveyard. With the skill, you'll always have that agent monster to banish. The Agent of Life Neptune will let you add the Sanctuary in the Sky from your deck to your hand if you banish it from your graveyard. You can use the skill to send Neptune to the graveyard and then special summon Master Hyperion by banishing Neptune to immediately get the Sanctuary in the Sky from outside of the duel. That is one of the basic combos that the deck does. Master Hyperion, of course, has an effect that lets you banish a fairy from your graveyard, a light fairy specifically, to destroy a card on the field, but you can do it twice per turn if you have the Sanctuary in the Sky on the field. What's really cool is that this is not a hard once per turn or hard twice per turn effect. So if you summon multiple copies of Master Hyperion, you'll be able to use each of their effects 1 or 2 times per turn, depending on whether Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field. One of the reasons I really like this deck is because, as you may know, I had been playing Armed Crossover because of the appeal of using the skill and then dropping Dark Armed Dragon and destroying your opponent's field. This deck actually just does it better because you can just use the skill to dump the fairies into the grave, summon Master Hyperion, or if you don't have Master Hyperion, you can get it with The skill, if you have Mystical Shine Ball or a different Hyperion monster in your hand, and then you can just start destroying your opponent's cards. Plus, it has other angles of attack, as I'll talk about later, because it's able to synchro summon a variety of strong monsters, and even has some can link summon Protector of the Agent's Moon, which I will again talk about later. So I talked about the Agent of Life Neptune as a card for you to send to the graveyard with the skill, but I didn't talk about what it actually does when it's in your hand. And it's actually an incredible card in your hand because you can just discard it to special summon an agent from your hand or graveyard other than Neptune itself. And if the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, which is really not hard to do so long as you did not fall victim to Artifact Lancia, if the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, you can special summon a Hyperion monster instead, including Master Hyperion. You can tribute a monster summoned with this effect, which is rarely relevant. Just be careful if you later intend to summon Skyscourge Invisil, although I'll talk about that later, the best method for summoning him. But generally, not being able to tribute the monster is not an issue at all. The reason I run 3 copies of Neptune in the deck is because of how strong this effect is, and because a lot of times you do want to draw it, or if you don't draw it, you want to search for it from your deck by sending back a Hyperion or a Mystical Shine Ball, because when you use the skill to send 2 monsters to the graveyard, you'll often send the Agent of Creation Venus to the graveyard for you to special summon with Neptune. So you might be asking, why summon Venus to the graveyard with the skill? And this is really the deck's strength. Destroying cards with Master Hyperion is a way to take quick victories, clear your opponent's field, and just attack and end the duel. But Neptune and Venus are sort of at the heart of the combos of the deck. Because if you use the skill and you don't have the Hyperion, you want to send Venus to the grave, and you can either add Neptune to your hand, especially if you're going first. Hyperion's not as good going first because there's nothing to destroy on your opponent's field typically. But you can use Neptune to special summon the Agent of Creation Venus, and then at the cost of 500 life points each, you can keep summoning these Mystical Shine Balls. Now, because you're doing that, if you use Neptune to summon Venus, you're doing that without actually using a normal summon. Why is that important? There's a few reasons. One, you can use that normal summon for the Agent of Mystery Earth later in the turn, if that's something you want to do. Or, what's more common is that you'll make a string of plays, a variety of plays, and ultimately, you're going to use that normal summon to tribute one of the Mystical Shine Balls or Protector of the Agent's Moon for Skyscourge Invisil. He's usually the normal summon. If you're normal summoning at the start of the turn, you're not going to be able to normal summon Invisil. Invisil has an effect where if you tribute a Light Fairy to summon it, it negates all spells on the field. So that's any spell currently on the field and any spell that the opponent activates. So it's basically Spell Canceller. The cool thing is that even though it negates the Sanctuary in the Sky, if you have the Sanctuary in the Sky on the field with Skyscourge Invisil on the field, the name the Sanctuary in the Sky is still on the field, so you can still use Master Hyperion's effect twice to destroy up to 2 cards. Many times you'll start with the skill, sending Venus and Neptune to the graveyard, or even 2 copies of Venus in case they have a DD Crow for one of them. You'll use Neptune's effect from your hand to summon Venus, special summon Venus. Use Venus's effect multiple times to summon 2 Shine Balls. You can send the Shine Balls away to summon Protector of the Agent's Moon. You can summon another Shine Ball. You're the 3rd one from your deck with Venus's effect. Then you can use the skill to send another Shine Ball from your graveyard to your deck to essentially summon a 4th one with Venus's effect while making up to 2 of your monster's tuners. I'll talk about Protector of the Agent's Moon briefly. The Protector of the Agent's Moon briefly. It's a Link 2 monster. Use 2 fairies to summon it. Often you're using the Mystical Shine Balls. But its effect lets you either, if you have Sanctuary in the Sky on the field, it lets you add Earth to your hand if you want, or you can dump a monster from your deck to the graveyard that mentions Sanctuary in the Sky. This effect, if you're not getting Earth with it, can be used to either send the Sanctuary in the Sky to the graveyard to turn on Pluto's effect, or can send Majesty Hyperion to the graveyard. Majesty Hyperion is a lot like Master Hyperion in that you have to banish an agent monster from your hand, field, or graveyard to summon it. But it can be special summoned from the graveyard. So kicking it there with Moon actually turns it into an extender that allows you to summon more monsters on the field to synchro summon more monsters. It's a level 8 monster as well, so you can tune it with the Mystical Shine Ball, turned into a tuner by the skill, or with Earth to make a level 10 monster. The other cool thing about Moon is that you get to tribute a fairy, including itself, to just destroy an opponent's card, which, if you're going second, is a versatile effect that you may need to use to get rid of something that's problematic on your opponent's field. So since Master Hyperion and Majesty Hyperion are level 8 monsters, and the Mystical Shine Balls, which can turn into tuners, and Earth are level 2 monsters, you're usually making... you have pretty easy access to level 10 synchro monsters, so I'm using 2 in the deck. You don't always see Ruddy Rose Dragon, but I really like Ruddy Rose Dragon in this deck. Ruddy Rose Dragon is kind of like Stardust Dragon, because if your opponent uses a card that would destroy one of your cards, card or effect, you can tribute the Ruddy Rose Dragon to negate the activation, and then special summon Black Rose from your extra deck. I think you can summon from the extra deck or graveyard, but it's pretty much always extra deck when you do this. It's good because Ruddy Rose Dragon is insurance against Dark Hole. Dark Hole has been gaining a lot of popularity, so if you can end with Master Flare Hyperion and Ruddy Rose Dragon, you're in pretty good shape, and you're defended against pretty much the most brutal card your opponent could play on their turn. The other level 10 synchro in the deck, Master Flare Hyperion, is absolutely insane, and it's limited. It's on the limited 1 list because of it. But it lets you... It has a bunch of effects. One of them lets you just send an agent monster or a monster that mentions Sanctuary in the Sky from your hand deck or extra deck to the graveyard to change its name to that name and replace its effect, this effect of it, with that effect, the effect of the monster you sent. So you can use it to copy Master Hyperion to start destroying your cards if you're second and your opponent has cards on the field. And if you're first, you're typically going to use it to send Celestial Nightlord Parshath to the graveyard from your extra deck. Now, you can't actually link summon Celestial Nightlord Parshath. So this is something that confused me when I first built the deck. I was wondering why people have this in their deck until someone used it against me and I realized. You can't summon Celestial Nightlord Parshath because the skill actually locks you out of link summoning it since it's not an agent. But its effect mentions Sanctuary in the Sky, so if you copy it with Master Flare Hyperion, you can use its effect to discard a card and add a Sanctuary in the Sky or a card that lists it in its text from your deck to the hand. Or if Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, which you'll almost always be able to get it on the field before summoning Master Flare Hyperion, then you can search for any fairy type monster. That's where Artifact Lancia comes in. Lancia is a fairy, and it is a silver bullet against a lot of decks, including agents. So if you're playing in the mirror match, your turn 1 goal is usually to summon Master Flare Hyperion with Sanctuary in the Sky on the field, copy Celestial Nightlord Parshath, use its effect to search for Lancia, and then Lancia your opponent on their turn. By using Lancia on the opponent, they won't be able to summon Master Hyperion or Majesty Hyperion, which significantly reduces what they're able to do. You do have to watch out because if you Lancia them, you won't be able to use Master Flare Hyperion's other effect. This effect you can chain to any effect your opponent uses to just target a card on the field and banish it. You do need to banish a fairy-type monster from your hand or graveyard in order to use this effect. So Lancia, an opponent's Lancia can shut it down, and since you are banishing with the effect, your Lancia or your opponent's Lancia can stop that as well. But in my experience, it's usually worthwhile to shoot off the Lancia in your opponent's draw phase, even if it's going to lock out your Master Flare Hyperion when you're playing in the mirror match. Because stopping your opponent from summoning Master Hyperion on their first turn going second will typically make it very difficult for them to overtake a duel, especially if you couple your Master Flare Hyperion with the Ruddy Rose Dragon we discussed earlier, because the Ruddy Rose Dragon will then protect your Master Hyperion going into your next turn, where you'll usually be able to end it. I am using one copy of Herald of Green Light. Honestly, I probably should just cut it. It's not worthwhile. You're pretty much never searching for it, even though it is searchable by Master Flare Hyperion via Celestial Night Lord Parshat's effect. But usually, if your opponent is relying on spells, you're on the Invisil strategy, trying to just lock down all their spells rather than using the Herald of Green Light to stop one of them. So I talked about the level 10 Synchro Monsters. There are also a bunch of level 7 Synchro Monsters in the deck, as well as this level 5 Tuner Synchro Monster, Pluto. The 7s are easy to make as well because you can use Venus to summon 2 Mystical Shine Balls. That's 3 stars for Venus, plus 2 for each of the 2 Shine Balls, for a total of 7 stars. Turn one of them into a tuner using the Tuning in the Sky skill, and you'll be able to make Clearwing Synchro Dragon, Black Rose Dragon, or Cyberse Quantum Dragon. Black Rose's use is obvious. A lot of decks don't even play it. But if your opponent's going first, builds up a big field, having this in your extra deck applies constant pressure where they have to start attacking your field with trap cards. Not like physically attacking, but they need to start reacting before you get 7 stars on your field and use the skill to turn one of them into a tuner. Don't forget, once you use the skill, your opponent does not get an activation window to play cards. If they let you summon Venus with 2 Shine Balls, and you use the skill, you can then instantly Synchro Summon Black Rose Dragon. So it's not like they can then flip Crackdown after you use the skill. So you have an opportunity to turn a monster into a tuner and Synchro Summon before they can respond. So this comes in handy a lot. So I like Black Rose in this deck. It's a personal choice. I understand not everyone plays it. One of the other 7s is Cyberse Quantum Dragon. For stuff that can't be destroyed, this is usually a pretty good answer. At the start of the damage step, you can return an opponent's monster that battles to the hand, and then it can attack again. Simple effect, pretty strong, 2,500 attack points, comes up every so often. Clearwing Synchro Dragon is actually insane, and I didn't realize exactly how insane it was until I started using it. But the first effect, which can be used once per turn, can just negate the activation of a level 5 or higher monster's effect. This is immediately obvious against decks that rely on level 5 and higher monsters, including the Tuning in the Sky deck that uses Master Hyperion, Master Flare Hyperion, all these Synchro monsters, so it can stop that effect. Perhaps more significantly, it has a second effect that negates the activation of an effect that targets one of your level 5 or higher monsters. So even if your opponent isn't using level 5 or higher monsters, since your deck is full of them, Clearwing Synchro Dragon can help to protect you from those monster effects. Against decks that use level 5 and higher monsters and target your Synchro monsters, target your level 5 and higher monsters, you can usually get 2 negations out of Clearwing Synchro Dragon, which protects your field, destroys their cards, and often makes it impossible for your opponent to dismantle your field, especially when it's coupled with Master Flare Hyperion, which again is really not hard to do at all. Clearwing Synchro Dragon comes up a lot in the Agent Mirror match because it shuts down Master Flare Hyperion as a level 5 or higher monster whose effect you can negate, and as a monster who targets. And even stops Protector of the Moon Agents because even though it's not a level 5 or higher monster, if they use it to target one of your key monsters, Crystal Wing can protect you. The other level Synchro monster is Pluto, which is level 5, which you can make by tuning typically Venus with a Shine Ball, because that's 3+2. Pluto's effect you can only use if you have Sanctuary in the Sky on the field or in the graveyard. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're on a Pluto route, you can use Moon's effect to dump Sanctuary in the Sky to the graveyard. In the event that your opponent used Artifact Lancia to stop you from banishing Neptune to get Sanctuary in the Sky. But Pluto's effect is lets you banish a monster from your graveyard to target an effect monster on the field and change it to face down position. But this is a quick effect if you have Sanctuary in the Sky on your field or in your graveyard. So that's where Moon comes in when you're under the effect of Lancia and really need to get that Sanctuary in the Sky somewhere. Moon is basically just disruption. It's a good effect depending on the deck you're playing against. It comes in handy a lot. It's also a tuner for whatever that's worth. Sacred Waters in the Sky searches your deck for any card that mentions the Sanctuary in the Sky, or can activate Sanctuary in the Sky from your deck, which I don't think I've ever done. Searches for a monster that names Sanctuary in the Sky. But it can get stuff like Master Hyperion, it can get Neptune. It can't get Venus, because Venus doesn't mention Sanctuary in the Sky. But more often than not, you want one of the Hyperions or the Neptune. It can get Earth as well. So it really just improves the consistency of an already consistent deck. And the other cool thing that it does is it can protect one of your monsters from being destroyed in battle if that monster names if that monster's effect has the Sanctuary in the Sky in its text, by banishing the Sacred Waters in the Sky from your graveyard. So it's just additional protection for an incredible field. I'm also using a copy of the Chorus in the Sky. Honestly, I haven't found this card to be too good. For 1,000 life points, you can get a fairy back from your graveyard, add to your hand, and if Sanctuary's on the field, you can get one from your banish zone. Feels kind of like a win more card. I could probably cut this, honestly. A lot of times, the cards are just as effective in the graveyard, where you want to banish them to summon Master Hyperion. So it really did not come in handy too much. But it is searchable by the effect of Celestial Night Lord Parshath when you copy it with Master Flare Hyperion. So I did do that occasionally. So I kept it as a one-of, but it's up to you if you want to play it. You can test it out, see how it works for you. And then I am using 3 limited 3 trap cards. Crackdown and Compulsory Evacuation Device are just good cards, depending on the matchup, really. The real reason I played the 3 limited 3 cards is because for this Duel Links Main Event tournament, in the past, they have ruled that the number of cards in your deck after side decking must be the same number that you had before side decking. I think that was still the rule for this event. I played as if it was. But with that being the case, if I just ran a 20-card deck, taking out these limited 3 cards, so I'm just running the top 2 rows here, it would be almost impossible to side deck. I guess I could take out Herald of Green Light, and the Chorus in the Sky I mentioned, but there was just not enough cards that I just wouldn't want to take anything out to put in other cards that I really wanted to side in. I will talk about that side deck later because the rules of the tournament allowed for a 12-card side deck, so I will go through that. But before I do want to talk about another combo that I didn't use, but I see a lot of decks play. That involves Ancient Fairy Dragon, which is a level 7 Synchro monster. Ancient Fairy Dragon's effect that lets you destroy a field spell card on the field to get a different one from your deck, and gain some life points. At first I thought, when I saw this, I'm like, why Ancient Fairy Dragon? The deck doesn't play field spells. Well, it doesn't play any, but the skill can add a Sanctuary in the Sky to your deck every single turn, so you kind of have it, and it's searchable by searchable by the effect of Neptune when you banish it to summon Master Hyperion. So you have reliable access to a field spell card without it actually costing you a card. You can use Ancient Fairy Dragon to destroy that and search for a Summon Breaker. This deck can do a lot in a summon because Master Hyperion is so good it can just destroy your opponent's cards and attack. Summon Breaker will end your opponent's turn after their 3rd summon. So it's if you're playing Ancient Fairy Dragon in your extra deck and Summon Breaker in your main deck, the Summon Breaker becomes a searchable floodgate by the effect of a level 7 Synchro monster that you can very reliably summon on your first turn. So this seems really, really strong going first. But again, it is a little bit matchup dependent, because if you're playing against fairies, they can drop their own Hyperion and then not care so much about not being able to summon 2 more times. Specifically, since if they want to, they can just destroy Summon Breaker with the effect of their Hyperion. So it's matchup, but it's matchup dependent. But it is a really cool concept that there is a searchable floodgate for this deck if you choose to play it. My side deck consisted of 2 Artifact Lancias, which were huge in this tournament. I sided them in a lot. I played against the Mirror Match twice, so I would put in 2 additional copies of Lancia for that matchup. And I played against Dragon Link once, or the Boral, Varus Boral deck. Lancia is not good against that deck, really, so I would side the one I have in here out. It does stop Cast Dragon Levianeer, though I don't think it's really worth it to play against it. But Lancia was crucial for the mirror match. I played 2 copies of Dark Hole, which is also good in the mirror match. 2 copies of System Down, because in the past I played against a lot of Cosmo decks in these tournaments, and I also played against Infinite Track randomly, which the System Down really came in handy against, as well as Orchest in the past, which System Down came in handy against. So System Down is just a really good silver bullet against a lot of decks. I played DD Crow and 1 DD Crow in the side deck, along with 2 copies of Effect Veiler. Didn't really. I think I put the Crow in against the mirror match, the 1 Crow. It's not phenomenal, but if your opponent doesn't play around it, it can interrupt a Neptune play, which could actually be pretty key. And then I played 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole, which I think that was, I was thinking that would maybe be good against Blue Eyes, but I never sided it in, and I also didn't play against Blue Eyes. I'm not really sure what I was thinking, and I also put in 1 Summon Breaker, which probably was pointless without Ancient Fairy Dragon in the side deck. But the 2 Lancias were crucial, and I had those there when I needed them. So that was the side deck. If you don't play in the Master Duel, in the Duel Links main events, having a side deck doesn't really mean anything, because in Duel Links itself, there's no side deck. It was a tournament rule, and it was an official Konami sanctioned tournament, so this was their rule. As far as the matchups go, I think the deck really has one really bad matchup, which is the Boral deck. The reason the matchup, there's a few reasons the matchup is so bad, but the main one is because the Boral, the Varus' skill lets the player search for any monster whose attack plus defense are equal to exactly 4,000, which happens to be the stat line for Artifact Lancia. So if your opponent's going first, they can always get Lancia into their hand and then use it on your turn, so that you can't summon Master Hyperion or a Majesty Hyperion, which means you can't set up any level 10 Synchro Summons, or it's at least very difficult to set up a level 10 Synchro Summon, which cuts you off from Master Flare Hyperion. So that's one of the main reasons it's a tough matchup. Second reason being they have a skill that lets them just put a Link 2 onto the field that can destroy any card on the field by discarding a card. And as per the rules of Duel Links, when they use a skill, you can't respond. So the monster hits the field, and before you can do anything to that monster, like Compulsory Evacuation Device, they can use this skill and destroy something. So that, I think, like one of your best weapons against that deck would be Sky Scourge Invisil to cut them off from spell cards, because they do play quite a few spell cards. But the ease with which they can just destroy Invisil using the skill makes it barely worth it. So it's, I mean, you still summon Invisil, because at least then they have to choose between Invisil and Master Flare Hyperion. But the Boral deck is actually very good at just dismantling your field and even stopping you from doing plays because of the searchable Lancia. So that, I think, is the worst matchup. I think zombie decks can be a bad matchup if they go first and play Zombie World. A lot of your cards don't work because they only work with fairies, but that's really only an issue if they win the coin flip, go first, and open the Zombie World. If you go first, I've found that it's tough for them to beat you. So I don't really consider that a bad matchup. I think the Boral deck is a bad matchup, but I think the zombie one isn't that bad. I think Battle Chronicle Blue Eyes, this deck has a massive advantage over, and I think this deck has a massive advantage over most rogue decks, just because it can destroy cards so easily, and even though it has lengthy chains of plays, the duels don't last many turns. So that's the deck. If you have any questions about why a card's in the deck, what string of plays to do in certain circumstances, what your target end field is against certain decks, let me know in the comments. I'll try to respond to all of them that are up within a reasonable amount of time after my posting this video. It is a fun deck to run. I really enjoyed playing it. I think the Varus decks were a little discouraging to me because the matchup for this deck is really bad against that one. When I actually beat it in the Duel Links main event, but I did get very lucky because it is a tough matchup. But generally, they're going to keep using Lancia against you, and you're basically playing without Hyperion and either hoping to survive until they don't have Lancia anymore, or you're really relying on your Synchro monsters, particularly Clearwing Synchro Dragon. Clearwing's usually pretty good because a lot of their effects do target, and it can also stop Chaos Dragon Levianeer under certain circumstances if they use its effect because it's a level 5 or higher monster. So you do have plays and there's stuff you can do, but the recurring Lancia is just tough. So I did find that to be a really tough matchup. But yeah, I think this is perceived to be one of the strongest decks, so we'll see if a Forbidden Limited List update hits it, or whether it survives a little longer, because Neptune did just get released in the newest box, and the skill did just come out, so we'll see. I don't think this deck will exist in its current form for too long, but I don't know how much longer we'll have. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. I'm trying to bring up that subscription count a little bit with each video. And I hope that watching this video helped you better understand the deck, some of the reasons the cards are in the deck, and some of the plays that the deck can make.